and now I'm partner in building all of these businesses. And one of the new things that I'm like, I'm renovating a spa, and I'm like, wow, this is so much fun.
People need to not feel like, oh, they're too old to do something very different. When I was in law school, out of my class of 20, I can think of 3 people who were in their 40s. So many people are like, oh, it's too late for me to go to school for this or that. And it's not.
You just have to not be scared to put in a little bit of sweat and sometimes eat crow. But I think that's the key, is making sure that you can still be flexible and not just put yourself in one whole bucket.
Yeah. And now, especially with AI, I think that's even more important, that I think a lot of us are going to need to have flexibility because jobs are going to be changing a lot because of
Wrap up.
AI.
This is just a reminder that there's no expiration date on purpose. So your purpose can be at 42, 62, 72, really whenever. It's just going after your dreams is the most important thing, I think. Welcome to Holistic Dose. We've been through the plot twists, divorce, parenting, burnout, reinvention, and now we're doing midlife with way more honesty and way less BS. Think of us as your unfiltered friends, here to remind you that you're not too late, too old, or too far behind. I'm Tiffany.
And I'm Jeanette.
So today we're going to talk about why women over 40 are just getting started. I know this is really something that is very personal and relatable to not just myself, but I know for you too, Jeanette, and a lot of our listeners.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I know there's a myth that like by 40 you should have it all figured out, and we're here to say that's really not the truth,
It
honestly.
actually makes me think of, do you remember the Sex and the City quote? It's from Carrie. I think it's from one of the movies. And she said, enjoy yourself. That's what your 20s are for. Your 30s are to learn the lessons, and your 40s are to pay for the drinks. But I still feel like we're learning the lessons in our 40s and figuring stuff out. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not just for paying for the drinks.
I completely agree. Like, there's a thing with it's, yeah, I think I talked about this before. I had this fear that by 40, I should have had it all figured out. I
Yeah.
should have arrived. And I'm just getting to that point right now. And it's so fun. So,
Hmm.
anybody who is not there yet, know that there's absolutely no reason why you can't still achieve and go after the things you want.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I feel like before 40, I had so much of what I was focused on were expectations of what I was supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get to 40 and I'm like, wait a minute, what do I want to be doing?
Right.
And that was a huge shift for me.
Mm-hmm.
Even in my like teens, it was like it's expected of me to go to college. And then it's expected of me to, do something great. So I'm going to go to law school. And then it's expected that you work at a firm and work on becoming a partner, etc. And then I got to 40 and I'm like, wait, what do I really want?
Mm-hmm.
And really shifted a lot of things because of that.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. And now I'm partner in building all of these businesses. And one of the new things that I'm like, well, I'm renovating a spa, and I'm like, wow, this is so much fun. And so many people will say to me, like, well, you're not an interior designer or you're not an architect. Honestly, yeah, I went to school for graphic design, but when I was a kid, I really wanted to be an architect. And my mom told me, she was like, you can't be an architect. She's like,
Nice.
yeah, she was like, you're not good at math. And that really crushed my dreams. And I was like,
Oh,
wow. But I'm figuring it out and all the things along the way, and I've always loved renovation, so now it's just like, okay, I know graphic design, but I also know how to think in conceptually and in 3D and say, "Okay, what if I cut that wall down or I open this up or I built this out and this can be an experience here, and how can we build things that I'm sketching and I'm drawing and then learning about, like, the studs in the wall or where things can be moved or can't be moved or plumbing, and it's so much fun. Like, I'm like, this is maybe something like the whole interior design and design is something that
absolutely.
I wanna
Yeah, and
do.
and people need to not feel like, oh, they're too old to do something very different. When I was in
Mhm.
law school, so we had tiny law school classes. We had it was a class of 40, and then there was even like a smaller pod of 20. And out of my class of 20, I can think of 3 people who were in their 40s. Out of that class of 20, actually,
Really?
no, 2 in their 40s, one in his 50s, probably later
Wow.
50s, because he was a surgeon and decided to go
Really?
he retired and decided to go to law school at the same time that his son is going to law school.
That's
And
cool.
yeah, and then someone else was a mom whose kids I think were now college age, and she had worked in, like, banking and had always wanted to be a lawyer, so decided, "I'm gonna go to law school." And, something I hear in my job a lot from people going through divorce, and especially ones who need to think about how they're gonna support themselves. So many people are like, "Oh, it's too late for me to
Mhm.
go to school for this or that," and it's not.
It's not. You just have to not be scared to put in a little bit of sweat
Yeah.
and sometimes eat crow,
Mhm.
and you can do it. There's another area that I wanna get into as well too, is I'm always have an interest in real estate as well. And it comes from my grandfather immigrating from Ukraine and buying a bunch of rental properties in New York. And I've always wanted to get into that. And I think it's just better if you have your real estate license. So that's something I'll probably look into getting at some point as well, because it's just kind of comes all together. And then it's like I can buy the homes and then flip them and renovate them and design them and do Airbnb and just have additional ways of income. And I think that's the key is
Mhm.
making sure that you can still be flexible and not just put yourself in one whole bucket.
Yeah, and now, especially with AI, I think that's even
Mhm.
more important that I think a lot of us are going to need to have flexibility because jobs are gonna be changing a lot because of AI.
Yeah, it is completely changing. So we're going to be talking about, giving some examples of women that they started their careers later in life. But before we do, so I found some interesting stats. Some research from MIT and Northwestern found that an average age of a successful founder for a female is 45.
This is a business founder. That's
Mhm.
amazing.
Mhm, and versus, like, in their 20s, I do you just see those kinda there are some stories, like, I think about Bobbi Brown, right, where she started Jones Road. It was
I
kind of
love that whole story. Like, was it 20 years or something where she had a non-compete? It
yes,
was
she
many,
sold her.
many years when she sold Bobby Brown that she had a non-compete, and she didn't think that she'd be going back to work, but it's like immediately when that non-compete expired,
Yeah.
she was back at it.
Yeah, I mean, so the stories are probably not as common or often that, she was in her 20s and she sold her makeup line. They believed in her enough to sell it to what, Estée Lauder, I guess?
Yeah, I
And
think
then have
so.
that non-compete, and it's cool to hear her interview and speaking about that to say that, you know what, like, that passion was still inside of her, and she still had enough in her to kinda completely reinvent and create something new, and I know I still have yet to try the products, but I know you try her
I love
Jones
them.
Road.
Yeah.
Really good stuff, and also it says, Harvard study shows that emotional intelligence, confidence, and creativity peak in midlife.
Yeah. I
I
can
bet
absolutely
this
see that.
could also have something to do with too, I think if we're in the stages of life that we're at is like with our kids being a little bit older now and your mental capacity and is not stretched as thin with having to deal with all the younger kid
Mhm.
things.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree with that.
which, but at the same time, there are still a lot of people who are deciding to start families later in life as well.
Yeah.
So, it's not to say that you can't if you're in your midlife, it doesn't have to be in your 40s, but it could still be in your 50s by the time some people are with their kids getting a little bit older, more independent.
Well, that makes me think of Diane Keaton. Have you followed how she passed away recently? And
Yeah.
apparently so she never married. I really have
Oh, I didn't
enjoyed
know that.
I didn't know
I
much
loved
about
her as an
her, but
actress.
yeah, I did too, and I really enjoyed, have enjoyed just reading about her life. So she never married. She never wanted to marry. She said when she was young, she just
Wow.
knew, like, "This isn't for me." And then she adopted her children. She has 2 children, and I think she was in her 50s because, she just died at
Huh.
79 and her kids are, like, 25, 26.
Wow.
Yeah, so she was an older mom, but that's the route that she chose and what she wanted.
Did she have, like, a life partner at any point too,
I
or
don't
not
think so.
really?
She had
Hmm.
some long-term relationships with some famous people, maybe Woody Allen? I could
Okay.
be wrong about that.
Okay.
And there was someone else, a couple of very famous people, but never marriage.
That's interesting. Hmm. Also, I'm reading here too. So, a Stanford Center on Longevity states that women in their midlife are found happier and more purpose driven than at any earlier age, which I can relate to that.
Yeah, I can too. I mean, I think that for me, that shift of what is it, focusing on myself as
Hmm.
opposed to people pleasing and
Yeah.
trying to, live according to other people's expectations. So, yeah, I mean, happiness is going to increase when you focus on your own happiness.
Yeah, and then another thing I read too, which is interesting, hormonal and neurological shifts can actually sharpen decision making and creativity in your 40s and 50s.
That's interesting.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I know that when we had the menopause OT on and talked
Yep.
about perimenopause, one of
Mhm.
the things we talked about was the zero fucks to give and how it's
Exactly.
actually like hormonal, where women who are around perimenopausal age care less about what other people think, and that's hormonal. Like, that's interesting because I see that as absolutely true, where we're not as worried about what other people think, and we're more decisive and,
Mhm.
just quick to take action.
Yeah, I definitely speak my mind, probably maybe more than I should in many ways, but also we should not overshoot ourselves.
Yeah.
I just feel like life is so short. You keep hearing about all these famous people passing away so early, and I'm not going to let other people get in my way, but also I don't want to let myself get in my way. So I'd rather just speak up and be honest and go after what I want. And it might not be good for everybody, but that's kind of okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, and then there are quite a bit when I was looking for some research on this and some of the people who got started. I love the story of Mel Robbins. So I'm sure everybody knows her by now, but motivational speaker and author and best known for her book of this 5-second rule. So at 41 is when she was like depressed and, she suffered, I think, from alcoholism a little bit and she was just feeling stuck. And then she woke out of bed one morning and was just did her countdown and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that small action basically led to a whole global movement for her to create this whole like 5-second rule, get it going in the morning. And I do find for myself too, as soon as if I get out of bed like right away, rather than just linger and then go back, it's a lot harder and struggle.
Yeah.
But she created her whole, her podcast is completely successful and her book and everybody just, she's an icon and started late.
Mhm.
So, and then this is a funny, silly one, but Kris Jenner, I know we look at
Mhm.
her, it's like the Kardashian mogul and yeah, but she was a stay-at-home mom for her whole career
Yeah.
and then built this empire in her 50s.
Was she in her 50s when they Keeping Up with the Kardashians was, like, the big
Mhm.
breakthrough for her, right? And so she
Yeah.
was in her 50s then?
Yeah, but it kinda goes to show, like, I know that not everybody's gonna have just these kids who grow up to be a success in their household, but she was a stay-at-home mom with so many kids, and a lot of those same skills can translate to then managing,
Mhm.
and it doesn't mean your creative ideas are stunted, like, she's able to bring them to life, and she is just a powerhouse. Another one too is Vera Wang. So I didn't
Yeah,
know
I
this
didn't
about
know this. This is
yeah, I didn't know this
interesting.
about her, so she was a former figure skater and a
Hmm.
journalist, and then it was, like, at 40 when she entered fashion, which was pretty cool too. And then Julia Childs is another one who launched her career
Oh,
later in her
really?
40s. Mhm. And then, one that's pretty well known too is J.K. Rowling with Harry Potter.
Yeah, yeah. I love that one. I've read about that.
Yeah, so at 32 is when, she started growing and started publishing her book and then really became into her empire at 40s. And then Reese Witherspoon, I know that she already had her actress career, but what she's created with her whole media company and taking, she realized that there was not enough female representation in these really strong roles. So she started really identifying through books like which writers and bought the rights to them and made movies for them. And she's just, we don't realize it, but not just for her being an actress, but all the movies that she's brought out there. And I think it's a pretty cool example there. So I think like society will tell women that like 40s, you're too late. And it's really just not too late.
Mm-mm.
I think,
No, I think it's really the time for us to focus on being our authentic selves.
mm-hmm,
That's something that in the past years I've really focused on is authenticity. There's no
mm-hmm,
authenticity instead of just what am I supposed to be doing and just really aligning with, who am I? What are my values? What's important
mm-hmm,
in life? And then making my entire life align with that, which is really why I started my entire business. It was, you know what? I have these beliefs about the best way for people to divorce and what's best for families. And then in addition to that, the way I want to live my own life as far as I want to work remote,
mm-hmm.
because the big reason is because I want to travel. I want to be able
Yep.
to, our kids are teenagers now, but just a few years from being in college. And so one of my big goals is when they're in college, I want to be able to travel anywhere and work from anywhere.
Mhm.
And so, my business really is about aligning my, personal life with my work and making it happen.
I love your story, and I tell people about that all the time, and they are always feel the same, and it's just that I'm like, she was inspired because she just you love practicing family law, but you were tired of the knockdown, drag out
Mhm.
arguments, and that is something that if more people looked at, I like to call it too, like the white space. Like, what are people not doing, or what are they doing? And then you can find a way to do it better.
Yes.
Putting a spin on it, and then you
Yeah.
create, like, a segment of it, and anytime I tell people, like, "Oh, she does low conflict divorce," they're like, "I didn't know that's a thing."
Yeah. Another business owner who I used to work with once told me that she doesn't pay any attention to what the other like divorce law firms are doing. And I disagree with that because I want to do like the opposite, right? I want to
Mhm.
see like that, what you call it, white space. Like,
Yes.
I want to see where no one is and
Mhm.
then go there. And,
Yeah.
this also aligned with my beliefs. So it really was just perfect because there aren't enough people doing this, and it's just what I believe strongly in doing.
I completely agree. There's so many things that ideas that I've come up with, and they're all coming to life right now, which is really cool. Like, years ago, I had ideas for things, and now I'm bringing them to life in this spa that I'm working on Louis Vita, and just in so many other areas. And it's cool that I think there was one thing I learned from like Sarah Blakely is that she would keep this notebook with her in the car. And anytime she would drive to work, her commute was short, but she would intentionally get lost on the way to work and just go different places. And that's where your mind can kind of just go. And she would just write down ideas and ideas. And I started doing that like years ago myself, not it would just be random scraps of paper that I had anywhere, and as I'm driving, I'm like, "Oh my god," and then I found a moment to stop and write down the notes. And then I found myself like, because a friend of mine, Crystal, she had told me this once before, she was like, "It doesn't matter if like, those ideas are yours and no one's gonna take them." That's the thing is you never have to be worried about like, "Oh my god, someone's gonna steal my idea." Like, that was yours and your passion is still there, and it's okay that, like, you had this idea years ago and it maybe didn't pan out, but it doesn't mean that you can't still pick it up now. Because
Mhm.
maybe a couple of years ago just wasn't the right time. There's so many examples of
Yeah,
that,
I mean, I launched a business before and it didn't even work, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it again later. There's so
right?
much that comes with being older and having the
Mhm.
experience and having just the failures. Are you hearing the every time I get an email? Okay, good. Because I did not turn notifications off and I'm it's like ding, ding, ding. So
You're
I'm
on
glad
high
that
alert.
I'm glad that y'all cannot hear that. Yeah, I mean, here that was another one. We're very busy, which is a good thing.
We're squeezing it all in, it's like what we talked
Y
about in our last episode, but
Yeah.
we have to keep going, and I think that, the less you care about proving to really
Yes.
anybody, the more freeing it is.
It is so freeing when it's just about your values, what do I want, and trying to reach that goal.
And something that's really important to me now lately is designing my life on my own terms. And
Mhm.
and that comes with the confidence. I'll remember back when I was like, even in my 20s and 30s, even though I was living on my own, and I've lived on my own since I think like 18 or so, I still always felt like this really close tether to getting my mom's approval. Even
Mm.
though she wasn't paying or supporting me financially or anything, it was always like I still felt as though I was this child that I had to check and I had to ask.
Yeah.
And stepping into my 40s, that kinda all went away. So it's no longer like, "Oh, well, you should be doing this or you should that," or, well, no, this is it.
Yeah, worrying about what other people expect of us can really hold us back.
Mhm.
And I see that a lot with people divorcing. Like, what's my family going to think? What will my
Yes.
church think? My community? And, so much about other people. And it's like, well, what do
What do
you
you really
want?
want? Mhm.
Hmm.
Exactly, and I think having kids too, it also helps, like, what message do you wanna show them? What lessons do you wanna teach them, And
Yeah.
I
And like, what decision would I want my child to make? Like, if my child as an
Mhm.
adult were in my shoes, what would I want them to do?
Exactly. Yeah,
And then being an example.
yeah, there's so many times lately when Gabby's like, "Mommy, can you just shut it off? Just stop." And then I get a really big win and something exciting, or she'll come to see the project and she's like, "Wow, that's cool."
Hmm.
And I'm like, "Oh my god, that's amazing." And I'm like, "I know I gotta set off more, but I don't mind her reminding me. That's just kinda is what it is, you know?" And I think the harder thing, the lonely struggle I feel for those who are trying to do things is that most people probably aren't, you know? Most people are working a normal corporate job, and they're
Mhm.
doing the regular grind. So when you're the one who's stepping out and doing anything outside of that, it looks like it's unfamiliar to them, and
Yeah.
people start questioning it. And then it becomes harder when you're explaining to your kid, and she's like, "Well, so and so's mom doesn't do that. So and so's mom doesn't do that." I'm like, "Well, we live a different life, and I'm creating something different for us. And
Mhm.
we're seeing the benefits now, and we'll continue to."
Yeah.
But
And also them seeing that not everything has immediate results. And I think we
that's
talked about this some last time. Logan actually asked me recently, "How much are you making from your podcast?" I'm like, "Well,
yes,
we're not making a bunch of money off of our podcast." He's like, "Well, why are you doing it?" I'm like,
mm-hmm,
"Well, I enjoy it. And, I'm passionate about sharing this message. And we are going to do a lot of things with this podcast. Things take
exactly,
time. And, we
yes,
have other things in the works, and it's kinda like a puzzle, like, things just have to come
yeah."
together in their own time.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to lay that foundation and know that a lot of those nothing ever comes easy, like we said last time, and it's the long game.
Mhm.
And yeah, there was somebody regarding the podcast, somebody in one of the Facebook groups, the marketing groups in Atlanta was asking recently. They're like, "Oh, I want to start a podcast. And, I'm going to do like one episode a month. And should I rent a studio? What should I do?" And I'm just like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "Well," and then they wanna know about money and all that stuff, and I'm like, it's not that. Like, you're gonna do whatever it is, whether it's podcasts or writing a book or, starting a business or something or learning a new skill, you gotta do it from the heart.
Yeah,
You really do. Otherwise, it's just not gonna be rewarding. You
yeah,
can't
and
really
that's
think of
that
any other way.
aligning with authenticity, be authentic,
Mhm.
and it's going to make the product of whatever your work is so much better.
I had, like, a random thought, like, that I asked Gabby of recently with these Taylor Swift songs. I'm not a Swiftie, but, like, her new album, I'm like, "Oh, I'm liking these
Oh,
songs."
really? I haven't listened to it. I've just seen a bunch of TikToks with people
Yes.
hating on it.
Oh, so I've seen so many TikToks of, like, people doing the dances, and I'm
Oh,
like,
really?
I've always wanted to do, like, a choreographed dance. Like, I know for my wedding, I did, like, a choreographed, like, routine, like a salsa
Really?
routine. Mhm. We did, like, a slow dance, and then it moved into that, and I'm like, I've always wanted to learn, like, a dance routine. So I asked Gabby, I'm like, "Would you be willing to, like, learn these dance routines with me and do them?" She said, "Yeah," and I'm like, "That's something new I wanna do. That is not something I'm gonna make money at or have a
Yeah.
career in by any means." But it's something that, like, several years ago in my 30s, I would be like, "No, never,
Mhm.
never,"
Yeah,
you
I
know?
feel like in other decades too, and I think we've touched on this a little bit before, but I focus so much on the next step, like living for what's coming instead of just like enjoying the moment.
Yeah,
And it's so important to just take a step back and also enjoy yourself now.
I agree, so that's what we're gonna do. I'm like, "This weekend, we are going to" first, I was like, "She's gonna help me pack for this Vegas trip that we're going on, the girls' trip." Or hoping in the future that we're gonna make a community of all of our listeners and a whole gang crew because we're going on a girls' trip next weekend to Vegas. We're gonna go see Alanis Morissette with a couple of our other girlfriends, Amanda, Melissa, and her cousin, and it's gonna be awesome. But I'm like, "Gabby, I need you to help me pick out my outfits so we can share them in the group chat." And then second, we're gonna learn these Taylor Swift routines. And then I'm gonna, like, figure out more interior design stuff because 'cause I'm just, like, loving it.
That's awesome. I love
Yeah.
it.
So before we wrap up, this is just a reminder that there's no expiration date on purpose. So your purpose can be at 42, 62, 72, really whenever. It's just going after your dreams is the most important thing, I think, because you are allowed to reinvent yourself and completely rechange your whole purpose. I think
At
it's
any
digging
time.
yeah, dig deep to, I like to look back. There's this trend, and I want to do it too, where have you seen it where they're doing your current self, like hugging your younger child
Yeah.
self?
Yeah.
I'm like, just reminds you of that younger Tiffany that was like, I really want to be an architect.
Mhm.
And then I'm like, I'm kind of figuring this out in a different way. And
Yeah.
it's so much fun. So make sure you keep listening and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you guys haven't given us a review yet, we would really appreciate it, specifically on Apple Podcasts. And make sure you're following us along on social media. And if you're not, it's at A Holistic Dose on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And you can visit our website at aholisticdose.com. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll
See
be
you
back
next
next
time.
week with more Unfiltered Friend Talk right here on Holistic Dose. Bye.